Gradually, as we saw more and more of what was happening, we realized that it is in India's interest to enter into bilateral foreign trade agreements, free trade agreements. It's essential that agreements are balanced. They are in the best interest of both countries. They address the sensitivities of both countries and help us protect certain sectors which we need to protect. And correspondingly, the other country likewise can protect their sensitive sectors. We also recognize that we can't make everything efficiently ourselves, and we'll need to continue to depend on other countries for several products. At the same time, we recognize that many of our products, which would otherwise be very competitive in other geographies, particularly the labor oriented ones like textiles, footwear and leather, pharmaceuticals, are areas where we could be very competitive if we got access to other markets through agreements. So, therefore, we decided that we must talk to like minded countries, particularly countries which have a rules based trading order, which are transparent in their economic systems, as India is, and enter into arrangements which are a win win for both sides, which are fair, equitable, and balanced. You might have noticed we've entered into force two agreements last year with UAE and Australia. We are well on track in discussions with several other countries to look at bilateral trade agreements. We are looking at one or two multilateral trade agreements also, where we believe we can get benefit and where there's a reasonable chance of making it equitable and fair for both sides, and which has been implemented in big measure in the last 2.5 years, has been the upgradation and expansion of our health infrastructure. Prime Minister Narendra Modi would have probably given the largest focus to health ever seen in the last 75 years. And we today have a situation where we've expanded our ICU beds manyfold, we've expanded our oxygen capacity manyfold, we've expanded and improved the quality of our hospital infrastructure as a whole. We are looking at skill development, training of our healthcare workers, much more larger numbers in current times. We've almost doubled the medical colleges in the country so that we have almost 3 times now the number of seats for medical education, both at the graduate and postgraduate level. Health infrastructure as a whole would be one big outcome. And as many of you may be aware, we today are running the world's largest free healthcare program. 500 million people are eligible for free healthcare in India through a government sponsored program. The other important lesson has been about supply chains. I think resilient supply chains is a lesson that many countries of the world learn. I still remember when the first lockdown happened, end of March 2020. We were struggling for so many critical equipment, including small things like personal protective equipment, PPEs, that the overalls that the doctors needed to wear. We got the entire Indian industry, both in India and Indians working abroad, to try and locate adequate supplies of PPEs. And you'll be very amazed to know that despite our best efforts, we could not locate adequate personal protective equipment anywhere in the world. Everybody was protecting their stocks for their own use. And we realized that it's important that and you saw the same thing with semiconductors, you saw what happened with shipping, freight rates became 10x, and a few countries could dictate what will happen to other economies. I think we've learned our lessons well. We are focusing on strengthening India's capabilities on all these areas. PPE is personal protective equipment is a very good example of how India came up to speed. We are today the world's manufacturer of personal protective equipment. Our Indian industry really rose to the occasion. And within a few months, we not only met our own needs, we started exporting PPEs to the rest of the world. So, a lot of factors that became challenges in the pandemic were converted into opportunities for India's future, India's growth story. And therefore, today we feel far more empowered, far more confident as an economy when we deal with other nations, far more confident of our ability to be able to take the Indian economy to much, much greater heights. Pranav, I think if you look at China's own story since the early 80s, it's a story which most of the developed world benefited from was the low cost manufacturing and volume manufacturing so that you could get economies of scale and the gradual improvement in their quality curve. That is what helped the Western world in terms of their supply chains and their supply of manufactured goods for consumption.